And we are live. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Soul Survivor podcast. Ryan and I back for another week to recap Survivor Season 45, Episode 10, and also, since we're a little late here, preview Survivor 45, Episode 11. What's up, Ryan?
Dylan, I'm doing pretty well. For those that don't know, Dylan changed the time of the podcast, and I was like, okay, mobster. And Dylan's like, well, how am I the mobster? Looking forward to discussing episode 10. I think after last week's episode, I think we kind of got back on track this week. So.
Yeah. I think this was a really good episode. I think, we have, there's definitely a lot to talk about. I think that, we kind of all saw this as the eventual outcome for Bruce. Like, I think that we've been talking for a few weeks. We're like, this guy's going to go home with the idol in his pocket. Like, it's going to happen eventually. And, it's funny because obviously I'm watching the episodes late now. Otherwise, we'd be podcasting on Wednesday night still. But the other night I'm working and I obviously mute my, I don't go on Twitter the entire night. I was like, I cannot see what happened. Obviously I don't want to be spoiled. And for whatever reason, and I guess I'll know to turn off alerts in the future, I got an unwanted alert from Twitter. And Twitter like sometimes sends you these alerts that like you aren't signed up for. And I'm signed up for all sports related alerts, but like, I'm not signed up for anything Survivor related, but I guess like sometimes it sends you alerts based on like stuff that you read. And I actually got an alert in the middle of my work shift. It was a tweet from Bruce that said, "Nice job, Emily." And I'm like, oh no. What does this mean? And I, at first I'm like, of course I'm like, oh no. I was like, does this mean what I think it does? And then I'm like, maybe it means that nice job making another move, that he was in on. Maybe it means nice job with the immunity challenge. Like, you never know what it could be. So I'm watching that episode. And for some reason, even though I had seen this tweet, the entire episode, I'm sitting there like, there's no way he doesn't play this idol. Like, there's no way he doesn't play it. Like, it seems like such an obvious spot to play the idol, obviously. And he just doesn't play it. So props to Emily on what some people say is a good move and some people say was the wrong move, but was her intended move. She pulled it off. So I'm just curious, Ryan, and we can start right off with this. And, we'll focus more of the podcast on a preview going forward since we're a little bit closer to next week's episode. But what are your thoughts on Emily's move to get out Bruce? Do you think this was the right move, or do you think she should have targeted the Reba before, like many are saying she should have?
Yeah, so that is the question of the episode. I think off the cuff, like most people, I was like, bad move. You're heading into the final 7. You've given now all the control to the Reba 4, and you really now just set yourself up to keep getting pagonged. After Caleb got voted out, it's been Belo, and the trend probably could continue next week. So I was like, Emily, you had to take control in the game. You gave the game away because that's the problem also dealing with Final Four fire making is like the Rebas are not incentivized at all to break up because they don't have to make a move at Final Four. They can all just go into the last challenge and, fight it out. So first you're like, bad move. Then when you think more about it, I was like, okay, number one, it's impossible to get these Bellos on the same page because Katurah hates Bruce. Jake doesn't trust Bruce. Bruce is lying to Jake and Katurah, so they are impossible to work together. So even if Emily wanted to make a move against Julie, like was teased in the episode, there's a chance she couldn't even get it to happen. Now, let's just pretend she does get it to happen and they all can vote together. What if the shot somehow misses, whether an idol gets played or one of them, splits or whatever, the plan fails. Emily's spot, like she said, blows up in her face. She now is no longer safe with the Bellos, possibly because they could just easily just turn on her. The Rebas aren't going to trust her anymore. So thinking more about it, I feel like this actually probably was the right move for Emily because, yeah, she's kind of banking on Reba turning on each other at this point still, but I don't even know if she could have had the numbers to even make the move to begin with.
So look, here's what happened. And I think you make a lot of great points. Here's what happens here. Is that we've had several great tribal councils this season. And, people, have been talking all about how, this is finally starting to feel like, kind of a little bit like the 30s again. Is Survivor back? Is it the best season in a new era? And people get, a little bit spoiled after having so many good tribal councils that when they have a few more simple tribal councils, then they're like, well, we just watched all these tribal councils. We need more. We need more. The truth is this, is that I think when you really look into it, I think this was the right move for Emily. And we've seen in this new era game, again, there's not a lot of time between votes. You're basically voting somebody out every single day. It's not like, 39-day season where there's multiple days in between. Things could change. You can make people forget about things in a couple of days off. Like, votes are happening every day. People have short-term memory. And I think that's why we've seen some of these great big threats get voted out. Like, we saw Omer, like, he made his moves too early. At the end of the day, he set himself up for a blindside at, I believe, final 7. So it's like, if you're Emily, you would rather play low key here. And I think that maybe, just maybe, by eliminating Bruce here, not only does it eliminate somebody who is a threat to go to the final tribal council strictly because, one, people don't think he can get votes, and two, he's a massive immunity threat. He is in every single immunity. So not only do you get rid of that, and also somebody who had an idol, by the way. So, that person had an idol. They could easily blow up the game with that idol if you don't play your cards right. So not only do you get rid of that person, but now you get to a point where still, even though you didn't target a Reba here, is Bruce being out enough to maybe be able to get Katurah and Jake on the same page for a move?
Maybe.
And all you have to do in the final 7 is pull one Reba over that says, you know what? I cannot go Reba strong to the final 4 because I will not win. Now, they teased out a Julie vote here, potentially, which didn't happen. But based on some of Julie's comments that she's made, it seems like she understands that she's 4th out of 4 in this Reba 4. I wonder if next week is the week that Emily approaches Julie and says, this is our chance to make a move. And we spoke a lot about on the podcast last week. We said, I said that I wanted to see a move happen at final 8, but I felt like that she should maybe wait one more vote. And that's what she did. So I feel pretty good about Emily's move here. And I think that a lot of people that are, wanting that big move to come, wait a second, because I think it could be happening next week.
And you brought up a good point that I left out, which is that, can you get Jake and Katurah on the same page? I don't know, but you have a much better chance if Bruce isn't there, because Bruce is really kind of that linchpin, or he's kind of that piece where it's like it's so hard to get them all to work together with, the idol lie that we'll talk about and all the other shenanigans that's happening with Belo. So I really do think that, to your point, if Emily and Jake and Katurah have any hope of making a strike against Reba next week, barring any own Reba turning on each other, they need to maybe get Bruce out, because you can hopefully get the other two on the same page. And again, I think Emily, she's a very rational player. She's a financial analyst, so she's probably doing the calculations and saying to herself, like she says in the episode to Bruce, I think she said, she's like, this move cannot fail, because if it fails, my position is done. And she probably is like, it's probably safer for me to keep this Belo knocking off going. Me staying good with Dee and Julie. We just went on a reward together with the women, so I have that bond. I'm still having good conversations with Katurah. I'm filling Jake in that he's on the bottom. I'm giving Jake good information. Austin and Drew and I still have the final 3 possibly. So I think in her mind, it's like, it's just the safest thing to do to go this way. And hopefully next week I can then, like you said, make a shot when it's one vote later, and I can now maybe get Bruce, Jake, and Katurah on the same page.
Yeah. I think that's what she's probably thinking in her mind, right? Because again, you said the Rebas could just stay strong and go. But again, if you're like a Julie type player, and even honestly, if you're any of the 4, you have to start thinking to yourself, it's not going to, if I'm going to final 3, it's not going to be easy for myself to differentiate my game and pitch myself against the other Rebas, because we all played such a similar game. So I think that would be very tough. And I think they all know that eventually, maybe they have to turn on each other. And maybe I'm wrong about that. Maybe we're wrong. Maybe Dee feels like she played a better game than the other 3. Maybe Austin feels like he's playing the best game. Maybe Drew feels like he's playing the best game because he orchestrated the Kelly vote. Like, maybe that they feel like they could go with each other to final 3. But again, I think that's doubtful. Again, we've heard Julie kind of hint that she feels like she's on the bottom of that 4. So I'm inclined to think that she'll make the move if given the opportunity. Now, the issue here is, and again, I have a suspicion that Austin. See, here's the thing: Austin has 2 idols, right? We know that.
Yeah,
we're getting that in final 7 here, so it would be extremely hard, in my opinion, for Austin not to make at least the final 4. That being said, final 7, he's got to be thinking about playing the idols. So does that make it harder for Emily to pull off a big move? For sure, yes, because you would have to think that if you're Austin, you think a move could be coming. But based on what they've been showing us about Austin and Dee's relationship, I feel like there could be a high possibility. And again, Dee's name has kind of consistently been thrown out now for weeks and weeks and weeks. And, we got that confessional from Julie last week, not this week's episode, the week before that, where she said, voting out D, I can never do that. Right. Which makes me think that maybe she'll change her mind and end up trying to do it. The question is, I could easily see Austin playing an idol for D very easily. So, the question is going to be, is he able to sniff that out? Does he play an idol for her? If the vote goes on Drew, does he want to save Drew? Does he try to save Drew? Does he play an idol on Drew, or does he just play an idol for himself? I think, obviously Austin's 2 idols are a major, major factor here. And I'm pretty sure, and I keep forgetting this because we haven't really had a lot of idol talk from him recently. But are both idols known about by everybody, or do people just know about one?
5 out of 7. At least Reba and Emily know about both idols. Jake and Katurah, I genuinely, and again, that's the problem. Like you said, I genuinely don't know if they're aware. They're definitely not aware of both. If anything, they may be aware of one because of like the amulets. Like maybe Kelly. I mean, Kelly said in her exit press she told nobody. So unless Jay was saying stuff, I have a feeling that Jake and Katurah maybe know about one. Definitely not 2, but they might not even know about either. But we'll see.
Yeah, and Austin's a huge immunity threat here. So I think Austin's going to be pretty tough to get out before Final 4. I think that he could very well be either the fire-making winner or fire-making loser. I could very much see that. But yeah, I'm very curious to see how these idols are used because we've kind of had this big buildup. And also, one other thing with these idols, and to me, kind of is like a foreshadow of like he would be willing to use it for somebody else's. Let's not forget that last week we saw him before the challenge, before that they knew what the exact challenge was. He put an idol in Julie's bag and was like, if you get separated from us and you need to use this because you're down in the numbers, here it is. And again, that was fairly irrelevant to that episode, which makes me think that it's like a foreshadowing thing that, well, maybe if somebody's in trouble on Reba, then he's going to give his idol away. But I am definitely getting vibes of him either playing both idols at once or playing an idol on somebody else in some way. It's just, I think that's my prediction. So I'm curious to see what happens there.
Yeah, I think it's interesting because it's almost like Austin and Bruce were like 2 sides of the coin, where Austin is a player in the like a lot of new era players who believes like I need to share information with my alliance because that builds a lot of trust, and that's why everybody seems to really like and trust Austin. This isn't like a old school Survivor where it's like you find an idol, you don't say anything, and you keep secrets. In this new era of the game, people are talking a lot, they're sharing a lot, and that's how Austin wants to play the game. And I think you and I could probably tell from very early on, Austin is the type of player who, if he feels like his allies in danger, he will play an idol on them. Like, I have no doubt in my mind, whether it's coming up, maybe, or before this, if Dee, Julie, or Drew were in danger, I have no doubt Austin maybe would have played it on them if he felt like he had to. Whereas Bruce, on the other side of the coin, I feel like you could tell from this episode and from others, he's only going to play his idol on himself. Emily feels like it's hard to work with him, and there's no way he was going to play his idol on Emily or Katurah. And even though he once said to Jake, maybe I'll play it on you, we'll see, he was never going to give it to Jake. Bruce was always going to play it on himself, and he does not play it on himself. But basically, I always saw Austin and Bruce kind of as those kind of opposites in that way. And I do think that with Julie having Austin's idol, you mentioned foreshadowing. We don't know yet if Austin has asked for it back, if Julie hasn't given it back yet because the little like chyron at the bottom of the screen said Julie has like an idol. So She hasn't given it back yet. I believe she would give it back to Austin if he asked for it, but maybe Austin, like I said, being the type of ally that he is, maybe is like, I have no problem letting you hold on to it, Julie, unless Julie becomes the vote, which I don't think she would be, but then maybe he would ask for it back. But we'll see what happens.
Yeah, it is interesting. And like you said, Bruce, I think it's funny because I think Bruce turned into the exact player that Survivor wanted him to be when they casted him. It was like a player who's extremely old school, tells it like it is, and it was just like a nice old school type character in a new school, very new era season. So that was really good to watch. I ended up like I think I ended up by the end liking Bruce a lot. And he was certainly interesting to watch. And one thing I do want to talk about Bruce is the move that he tried to pull at the beginning of the episode, which ultimately is not the reason he went home, but a major reason why he did go home. He goes up at the beginning of the episode and he says to, I believe he first tells Katurah that his idol went home with Kelly and that because he feared knowledge's power, he gave it to her and he got voted out. And Katurah didn't buy it for a second. And then he's like, oh, I was just lying to you. This didn't happen. I just wanted to see what you would think. And then he does it to Jake, but then doesn't tell Jake the truth. And then Jake runs back and tells Reba. And then they were like, oh, really? And then at the end of the day, Emily knew about this, right? I believe, did Emily know about this from Katurah, I believe? I just want to make sure.
I think Katurah mentioned it at the sanctuary, and then later Emily tells Jake.
Right. So this was just, I don't think this was a bad move by Bruce. Or I should say, it wasn't a bad idea by Bruce. It was poor execution on what was, I think, a decent idea. Why would you try that? Would you tell Katurah this and then tell her like, oh, well, like, actually, this is actually not the truth. Like, if you're going to tell her, I wouldn't even say anything to her because you guys are at odds completely and butting heads every moment. Mm-hmm. Second of all, why would he tell her the complete truth? And I think he had the right read, like, oh, Jake's going to go back and tell Reba, right? Which he did. And Reba, like, believed it for a second. And then Emily was like, oh, like, it's not true. So then that was it. It was squashed right there. And if he just simply chose to only tell Jake and not mention it to Katurah, then this vote could have ended up a lot differently. Because then Emily doesn't know if he's telling the truth or not. Katurah doesn't know anything. So it would have been more so them trying to figure out if he actually has the idol or not. So maybe they just would have, split votes. And if he did, and it would have ended up the same. But I do think that this was a decent idea by him that was just completely terribly executed. So that was interesting.
Yeah, I mean, I got to go back and think, like, what is the line of logic of telling Katurah this lie and then immediately being like, yeah, that's not true. I had you going, didn't I? I don't know what purpose that provides. Because, like, okay, so to your point about poor execution, I don't think, like, him telling Katurah, because he doesn't know, like, we see on the TV how much Katurah hates him. He says in his exit press, like, you see a certain thing on the show, like, I know that it seems so obvious that Katurah doesn't like me, but for the most part, like 9 out of 10 times, he was like, no, she and I got along pretty well face to face. It's only in confessionals where she's just ragging on me. And then, then in confessionals, then it's Kelly, then it's Kendra, then everyone just piles on Bruce. But at face value, he doesn't see how badly, she dislikes him. So like you said, I don't blame the idea, because if you tell Jake and then Jake goes off and tells Drew and Austin and it never gets around camp that it's fake, it could possibly work if Drew was like, you know what, I'm mad at Jake, let's all vote Jake out. It could work out. The problem is you telling Katurah, but then immediately fessing up to it where she already doesn't like you. Then she tells Emily, Emily tells Jake, and then you're in a pretty bad spot. But like, Bruce probably had to try a lot of different things here. I guess his mindset was just that the only way that we're going to get Reba to break up is if they put their votes on me and I play my idol. And then, like you said at the start of the episode, or start of the podcast, like, no idea why he doesn't play it to begin with anyway. He does say, like, the reason why he doesn't play it is because he felt that Katurah, Emily, and Jake were with him. And even if, he doesn't play his idol, Reba's either splitting their votes or even if they put all 3 votes on him, he still has 4 votes. So clearly he misread the room with Katurah, Jake, and Emily. But additionally, you know, he should have just played. Once you win 2 immunities in a row, you got to try to save yourself. Like I guarantee you, in 42, if Tori, you know, had an idol when she won 2 in a row and then got voted out, she definitely would have played an idol. So it's like when you are in the spotlight, you got to save yourself. But I guess you and I are kind of seeing what Bruce was thinking about.
Yeah. I mean, it's like, and you know, you just got to play the idol, save yourself for one more night, and then you never know what can happen. You can rattle off another 2 immunity wins, and then next thing you know, sitting in the final 5. So look, it's like, yeah, it's tough. He definitely misread the situation. But yeah, Bruce was definitely, I'm happy that they brought Bruce back. Could you imagine? I know we mentioned this earlier. Can you imagine if Bruce was part of the Tika tribe? Actually, like if he didn't get pulled from the game, what a interesting group that would have been.
I mean, look, I'm never going to compare Tika to like the all time like character tribes, like, you know, like Kasaya in Panama, or like, you know, the villains in Heroes versus Villains. Like they're not like Tika was not like an all time like character tribe, so to say. But like if you had Bruce there with Carolyn and Jam Jam and Carson, oh man, that group's wild. I mean, if we're gonna do a quick eulogy on Bruce, I mean, obviously made some mistakes, got off to a pretty rough start by arguing with Emily on the mats, but like we were talking with you, me and your brother. Bruce is just a fun guy to watch. Bruce is a lot of fun. I'm happy they brought him back. Happy he got a second shot, and I just think he was really entertaining. So happy to see that Bruce got a second chance.
Yeah, for sure. All right. What else can we talk about here? We got the reward challenge, which was certainly, you know, shout out for them showing the reward, but thumbs down for them going back to the sanctuary where good things happen. It's unbelievable that this is all happening. Again, I'm going to give them the benefit of the doubt and think that they're just doing this because still COVID protocol, but I think that there's also a decent chance that this is just the reality of rewards right now. But yeah. Emily winning this reward challenge was great. I mean, after the entire season where she cannot win a single thing, finally pulls through and wins and decides to take all the women with her. I think Emily's doing such a good job of hiding the fact that, and I think Stephen Fishback had a very interesting tweet about this. He said, and this was not a direct quote, but he generally said that it's so ironic because Emily is quote unquote hiding in plain sight and playing he says that Emily's playing a very Gabler-esque game in the fact that everybody really likes her, it seems. She's getting along with everybody and nobody sees that she's kind of pulling strings or kind of playing the middle, which is very interesting because we've heard that Emily applied for Survivor because she didn't like that Gabler won. And yet Fishback thinks that they're playing similar games, which I don't know how much I think that, you know, on a certain level, maybe they're playing, you know, a similar style. I think there are similarities to it. I definitely don't think it's the same, but there is that sense of like, quote unquote, hiding in plain sight there. That is real with Emily right now. And I want to give her credit because she doesn't pick Austin for this reward. She does not pick Drew for this reward. She decides that she's going to just go all women. And, you know, in that case, she brings Dee and Julie, right? She also brings Katurah, right? So you're kind of bringing people from like all across alliances, which kind of allows her to still play the middle and play all sides. Had she taken all Rebas, it would have been a bad look. Had she taken, you know what I mean? So I think she's doing a very good job playing a very good social game, and it's hiding the fact that she maybe is doing a lot more things than people think that she's doing. Now, the issue is with this type of game is like if she does get to the end, let's say she gets to the end and sits next to a Reba at the end, is her case enough over a Reba member who kind of was in control of the entire game? And that's what I think a lot of this is what a lot of difficulty is with the hiding in plain sight strategy, or the strategy where you're kind of pulling strings from behind. You eventually at a point you want people to see your moves and you want to own your moves. I don't really think that people are going to see this move against Bruce as her move because everybody else was kind of in on it. So, you know, she could probably take credit for this at final tribal council, but at the end of the day, is that enough to beat somebody from Reba who literally played on top the entire time? And that's something that will be interesting to see if Emily does get to the final tribal council which I've kind of always pegged her as like a losing finalist. That's kind of where I see her right now. But she could certainly win. I think she's playing a very good game, and I think she would definitely get votes. But I'm curious to hear your take on that. What are your thoughts on like Emily's game as a whole? What are your thoughts on how her game at the end would compare to anybody within Reba?
Yeah, so I think it's an interesting point because, obviously we had to put our mindset now in Survivor 45. We can't be comparing this to older seasons because the game has changed, it has sped up, and you see a lot of top players in this new era getting taken out before the end, which is why, we've seen a couple people get their way to the end, and it might just be at this point in the show's history, get to the end, be the most liked, and you can win. You don't necessarily need to be the best player of the season because they always get cut at 4, 5, 6, etc. And speaking of Stephen Fishback, I thought he made a really great point on one of the podcasts because I also thought heading into, tonight's podcast, I was like, well, if Emily sits next to Austin or Drew or Dee, like, can she really win? Like, I don't know. I mean, she has not been running things as much as the others. But Stephen brought up a great point. He was like, the jury is basically all Belo and Caleb, but Caleb essentially was kind of like an honorary Belo in some ways. So it's basically all Belo. It's been a pagonging. I guarantee you next week, Reba could flip on each other or Jake could easily go home next week. So all Belos on the jury. And if you think back to Heroes versus Villains, where the jury in Heroes versus Villains was mainly heroes, you basically have a situation where Sandra is up against Parvati and Russell. And Parvati and Russell, for what we saw on TV, played a much more dominant game than Sandra did. But Sandra was the person who was always like, I wanted to make a move against Russell. I'm telling the heroes, this is how it is. You can't trust Russell. You can't trust Parv. And she wasn't controlling that much, but because she had a great social game and because she was the one that was, quote, trying to make something happen, the heroes were like, you know what? We're going to give you the money. Now, I'm not saying Emily and Sandra are like 1 for 1, but it's almost kind of the same thing where Emily is the person going to Jake and being like, yeah, Jake, you think that Drew's trying to help you. He's not really trying to help you. He wants you out. And then she's going to Bruce and saying, how do you feel about tonight's vote? And Bruce is like, I think we can maybe, work with Julie. And she's like, Julie's not on board with you. So Emily's the person who she's not making the move happen, but she's the one that's like there for the Belos. You hear Julie, and I'm sure we'll get into it. Julie talking about like, she's the mom and she feels like she's kind of, backstabbing people and the mom archetype has some trouble. Like, could Emily actually be the one if she gets to the end where the Belos look at her and go, you know what, Reba kind of picked us off. Emily, we've seen a lot of growth in you as a person and as a player. Maybe we saw that you were trying to make stuff happen with us. Do you think that could be a way that Emily could get some, jury votes?
Yeah, I think that like, she had a very good relationship with Caleb, and I feel like Caleb could be like somebody who maybe sells the rest of the jury. And is like, Emily did not know what she was doing when she came into the game, and her growth was incredible to the point where, she literally would have been the first person voted out. And now she has grown all this way to the point of, kind of controlling things behind the scene. But again, I do think, especially if there is a flashy idol move from Austin or from anybody else, whether it be D or it is, I think, going to be tough for Emily to get votes over that, right? At the end of the day, a dominant alliance like that is a dominant alliance like that. And while Emily may be doing a great job of, playing a social game or maybe doing a great job of like controlling the middle, I think that players from a dominant alliance is I feel like that may come through even with the players on the jury. But it'll be interesting to see. I think that if Emily got there versus Reba, remember, it's not like I don't think she's getting shut out or anything. Like, we've seen a lot of kind of blowout votes lately. Like, we saw Carolyn get 0 votes last season, and I think all of us kind of expected that she was going to certainly get votes against Jam Jam, and she literally got none. Like, so it is tough to tell, but I do think that she would be able to get some votes here. But I also think, like, I think if Emily's going to win this season, then I think she needs to pull in Julie next vote at the final 7. And I think that's when she needs to make the move against one of the 3 others, whether it be D, whether it be Drew, and whether it be Austin. And then she needs to make sure that the final 3 is her, Julie, and Jake, and then see what happened from there. And again, but what I do fear is that everyone seems to be so scared of going to the final 3 with Mama J because her name is Mama J. But somebody made a good point on Twitter. When is the mom archetype that's got to the final? When is that mom archetype really ever won? And the answer is not that often. Like, usually occasionally, I guess you could say like, Denise won, but like, was she like she wasn't really like the mom of the season. Like there, she was with Lisa and like, you know what I mean? It's like, it's tough. It is tough. But I think that she needs to realize that the other 3 Reba are the ones that are going to get the votes, not Julie, and that she needs to bring in Julie, make the move, and then, get to the final 3 with her, Jake, and Julie. And that's, I think, Emily's path to winning right now.
Yeah, and I think Julie, because like you said, the mom archetype has a lot of trouble. People often cite, Dawn and Sherry and Monica. And yeah, and I think if moms have obviously won the game, like you said, Denise and Tina and other people, but like the people that are moms that are the mom of the tribe usually do fine. So people that like are said, oh, you're like, my mother in the game. Like that's the people that kind of struggle a little bit.
Right.
But if you're not that type of, archetype, you should be okay. And I don't think Julie is that much of that archetype. I mean, I think she is because people are calling her Mama J. But I feel like the thing why everybody cites with like Dawn and Monica and stuff is like, Dawn and was like, very anxious in the game, and Monica was too, and people like always were trying to like calm them down. I think people, whether it's a mom or whether it's like your little brother or whatever it is, people don't like in the game when you take care of them and then they stab you in the back because that hurts almost the most. Like I took care of you, I took the time to make you feel better, and you did that to me. Whether it's the mom or whether it's like a like a friend or like a little sibling. So I do think even though Julie is saying that, oh, I did that to Kendra, I did that to Kelly, it's going to hurt me in the end. I really feel like if she gets there and she can make just one move, I really do feel like Julie has as good of a chance as a couple people, I think.
Yeah, I agree with that. But yeah, there always is that risk, like you said, of like, you weren't authentic mama because you backstabbed me. And like, at the end of the day, you don't know how players are going to vote, whether it be, crediting a move like that, or are they going to be hurt over something like that? You don't know. It depends on the jury. Now, what other thing? Okay, so we didn't talk about the immunity challenge yet. Which has this challenge ever been played before? I didn't. Usually I'm good at recognizing the challenge. I can never pinpoint a season usually that it was on, but this challenge I don't believe I've seen before.
So this is like, to me, this is like a variation of the Fiji final immunity challenge where people were also holding themselves up on a vertical slope. The only difference there was that instead of holding on using pegs on the side, they had to like hold up like a rope over their head like this. And also water was kind of dripping on them too, making the slide slippery. So it was like a variation of that. It was another endurance challenge, but with some modern tweaks to it.
Yeah, and it was, as Jeff said, it was a carnival game. So
yeah, can we dive into that for a second? And again, this is where Jake is again. And I texted you and your brother. I was like, Jake is not an amazing player. Jake is obviously like the Owen Charlie Brown struggling, and the football just keeps getting pulled away over and over again. But apologies if anyone can hear the noise outside, which I can always mute for a second. But basically,
unfortunate. I could fill you in. I know what you're gonna say. Like Jake, he is, like you said, the Charlie Brown of this season, the Owen of this season. Yet it is hilarious that like pretty much everything he does is hilarious. Like his one-liners, the way he acts after somebody not him gets voted out at tribal council. Like this guy is gonna, if he gets to final 3 somehow as like the Owen, I'm gonna call it, there is a 0% chance if he gets to final 3 that he's getting a single vote. And it is so funny to watch because like, I think he's a good guy. I think he's hilarious. I think he's a great character, but like he is really struggling. And then like the way he acted when Kendra got voted out was insanity. Like he just like turns around, like stares her down, like he's like just like dunked on her or something. Like crazy stuff. But yeah, now that the siren's away,
now that I'm not being rudely interrupted. So so you think he's drawing dead?
Yes.
Okay.
And I know that's unpopular. I know it's kind of an unpopular opinion. A lot of people think he's getting like the underdog edit, but look, the underdog edit is rarely a winning edit. So
look, I came on the podcast and I said I'm never allowed to say drawing dead again after Gabler's win, because I said up until that our finale preview podcast that Gabler was drawing dead. So I'm not allowed to say that anymore. But I do think Jake obviously has one of the hardest roads left to get there. I think if he gets there, like you mentioned, will he be getting any respect at all? Will the Belo say, we felt bad for you and you kind of kept fighting and fighting and fighting, so we're going to give you our votes? But you're right. I mean, someone who doesn't have a lot of agency in the game is not going to get rewarded by a panel of super fans. That's a hard thing for him. I almost feel like, though, because he's getting an underdog type of edit, I do feel like he has a very, very slight chance if the jury ends up getting very mad at Drew, or if the jury gets mad at Julie. I could see maybe Jake getting some wins. I think someone who's in a worse spot to get to the end and win it than Jake is Katurah, because I really feel like we talked earlier about, Katurah. We talked about Emily and was this the right move for her? I'm really also wondering, like, was this the right move for Katurah as well? I really just feel like now that, because her whole story arc in the episodes has been Bruce has got to go. And finally, after 10 episodes, she finally casted her first vote for Bruce. Now that that's gone, it's kind of like now what? At this point, how is Katurah going to get herself to the end? Because even if Reba flips on each other, do Austin and Drew want to pull in Emily and make that their final three? Do Dee and Julie say, you know what, we also want to work with Emily, or we can use Jake to go after the guys? Like, I don't know who's including Katurah in their endgame plans. Not saying Bruce was going to, but I feel like even though Jake's the scrappy underdog, I'm almost wondering, does Katurah have even less of a path at this point?
Yeah, I think Jake has more of a path than Katurah. I think both of them, in my opinion, are drawing dead. I put some quotations on that because you never know at this point. But yeah, I don't see it for either of them. I think Katurah gets voted out before final immunity challenge. Or final tribal, I should say. I just don't see her at the final three. Maybe she is the 0 vote finalist. But I see Jake being more of the 0 vote finalist because we're seeing more of his story. Like, what is Katurah's pitch if she gets to the end? Like, I don't even know what it is. Like, we've basically seen her as the player that wants to get Bruce out. And again, that's not really her fault, but that's kind of what we've been shown. So it's like, I don't even see an argument that she can make if she gets to the end. Whereas Jake, it's like, he has the underdog edit. He could say, everybody tried to get me out multiple times and it never happened. And I'm sitting here right now. So, yeah, I think, in my opinion, both of them are pretty close to drawing dead, but I think Jake's path to the end is better than Katurah's, in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, look, we don't know. I mean, obviously, we're talking about episode 10, but we're also kind of a little bit previewing next episode, and I'm sure we'll get into some predictions soon. But, we are at the final 7. And at this point in 42, we were saying we feel like Omar has a great chance. Lindsay is doing really well in the game. Mike Turner is doing a great job. We didn't really see Marianne as a front runner. Then she single-handedly takes out Omar, and we're like, oh my God, Marianne just made the move of the season. Her winner's equity, or her chances kind of spiked a little bit. So we are still a few votes away from the finale, and also a few votes away from Final Tribal Council. I think the finale, Dylan, if I'm not mistaken, is Wednesday, December 20th. So we still have this week at Final 7, next week at Final 6, and then we head into the finale at 5. So you never know if, Katurah, I'm making this up, single-handedly takes out Austin, or if Jake somehow is able to take out Drew. Like, you don't know what could still happen yet. So even though I feel like we could obviously say Reba has the best shot, followed by Emily, followed by Jake and Katurah, we still have at least 2 more votes before finale night where someone could make a big swing and our whole perception's changed. So
yeah, I mean, I guess there is a situation, like you said, where, Jake hasn't been able to make a move the entire season. We think he's getting the Charlie Brown edit. And then all of a sudden, like, this is the episode. He finally is able to do it. He finally breaks through and makes the move of the year. And then it's like, all right, well, maybe he does have a chance. So I think that is a good point, right? We still are at final 7. There's still plenty of game left to play. So theoretically, it could happen because we've seen it recently.
Because also, by the way, with Bruce getting voted out, what we haven't verbalized yet is that we are pretty sure Bruce's idol will go back into circulation, right? So that obviously, if Jake or Katura or Emily can find that idol that goes back into play, that's huge for them if they can get their hands on that. If Austin gets his hands on that and he has 3, then the game's over. But if the Belos can get the new idol that goes into the game, which I assume one will, that's really big for them.
All right. Yeah, I for sure agree with that. You're right. I didn't even think about the idol that's going to come back into play, and Survivor's putting an idol back into play, because they love doing that, especially in the new era. I think one thing that we could talk about quickly before we hit a couple of questions here is like, I'm just curious, like, what are you thinking in terms of this? Like, if you had to like say right now who you think is winning, what would you say? Like, I'm curious to hear what you think.
I mean, I think it is really hard because, I don't think there is a clear front runner. Like, obviously, the last couple seasons, we've seen a couple of front runners, whether they've won or not. And I don't know if there's a clear one yet because Reba just has been so dominant in this game. Because, I mean, everyone's coming out in these exit interviews and saying, I knew the guys were close. I knew the girls were close. I had no idea that they were so tight as a 4. So they're doing all a great job. I feel like the front runner, if I had to pick one, is D. But a couple people now, Emily and like you said earlier, Julie, have voiced some concerns like Dee's kind of playing a strong game. It's kind of her way or the highway. And she's kind of running the show here where maybe Austin and Drew are kind of like her vice presidents or whatnot, but she's really calling some shots. I don't know if Dee gets there, but I think if Dee does get there, she wins. I don't know if Drew will get a lot of, I don't know how much love Drew has on the jury. I feel I know you said Emily could be, like a final losing finalist, but I feel like I would say either Emily, maybe even Austin. I mean, maybe Austin's just like the obvious winner that's been in front of us the whole time, but like I would say Emily or Austin myself.
Yeah, I think for me, I feel D or Austin, and then Emily's next for me. I just feel like that those two, D and Austin, are so tight that I think that, again, I could easily see them attempting to make the big move against D, and then maybe idol gets played for D and she gets saved. I could see Austin just using the idols on himself and just getting there and then winning fire and then being able to sell everyone. He could, if Austin gets to the end, I mean, he could make an incredible case and be like, everybody knew I had idols. Nobody cared the entire time. Nobody targeted me. My social game was that good that I put myself in the position to not be targeted, So that's my ranking right now. But it is, like you said, it is tough to say. I either think D wins or goes out by a brutal blindside. Like that's kind of where I'm at right now. I think that it's either going to be like a devastating vote out, like rather soon within the next episode or two, or she gets to the end and wins. I don't think there's like an in between where she's like a final 5 vote or something. So yeah, that's my take. But we could hit some questions right now. Alrighty. So we got a question here from Ohio State for the win. He wants to know, do you think an original Reba 4 will get voted out next? I do think it will finally happen in this coming episode. Yeah, I mean, we spoke a little bit about this in the beginning. Like, I think that, I've been vocal and Ryan's been vocal as well in our previous episodes of the podcast, like that we thought that 8 was maybe a little bit too soon for Emily to make a move, or Julie or whoever wants to come over on that side. Felt like maybe it was a little bit too soon to make a move because as we've seen in the new era, when players try to make moves too early, it'll put a bigger target on their back. So I think that Emily, if she's going to make her move, Julie, if she's going to turn on Reba 4, and again, maybe it's not Julie, maybe it's somebody else that turns. But I think if any of the Reba 4 are going to turn, it's very easy to just make the move now when you have seemingly a 4-3. So all it'll take is one person to flip over. And again, that's assuming that you could actually get Jake and Katura on the same side as Emily, which who knows if that could actually happen. But if a Reba 4 does not get voted out this episode and it's Jake or Katura that goes home, or Emily, I will say that this Reba 4 will certainly be one of the more impressive alliances that we've seen in quite some time that they were able to kind of run the table like that. Because, and I'll say that if they don't go home this week, it'll be incredibly hard for me to see an outcome other than one of those four winning. It already is, to me, it already is hard for me to envision that one of them don't win, but there is still Emily there. But if Emily lets them hang around for one more vote, then she's running out of time very fast, especially with Austin's idols there.
Yeah, I mean, look, I got to give them a lot of credit. Like I said, people coming out of the game are just seeing the two pairs. They're not seeing the four. They're kind of losing the forest for the trees, so to say. So I give them a lot of credit there, and they are a very dominant alliance. And I think the thing about these new era seasons is that what we've seen from all 5 seasons so far is that the tribe that sticks together the most, because there haven't been swaps for the most part, the tribe that sticks together the most, whether it's Tika, whether it's Luvu, the blue tribe from 41, whether it's the Taku tribe from 42, like I said, Tika, Reba, if your tribe sticks together because of the no swaps, that a player from that tribe usually wins. Now, this season there was a swap, but what happened, Dylan? There were 3 tribes in the swap. 2 of the tribes were basically everybody from one of the original tribes and one other new person. And then in the other tribe, there was like the 2-2-1 split, and then Austin and Drew won that war. But the other 2 tribes, it was like all the Belos and Caleb, and then it was all the Rebas and Sean. So there was a swap, but there really wasn't a swap, if you know what I'm saying. So it's like in these new era seasons, because of the way the show is panned out, if you stick with your original tribe, you have a great chance of winning the game and going far. To Ohio State's question, will a Reba member get voted out? Call me crazy, Dylan. I'm going to say no. I'm going to say Jake goes home next week. I really do feel like maybe Jake has 9 lives. He's already survived 3 in a row. Maybe he could survive a 4th. I really would love to see a chance where Austin and D maybe go against Drew and Julie, and Drew and Julie go against Austin and D, and then Emily, Katura, and Jake are the swing votes, maybe. I would love it. But I'm going to go out on a limb and just say I feel like the pagonging is going to continue, and we're going to lose Jake next week. That's my prediction.
Interesting. And then this is our last question here. Again, from Ohio State for the win, wants to know, have we gained any insight on the remaining players' fire-making skills? I'm wondering who's strong in fire and who isn't of the 7 remaining players. Interesting question. And this actually crossed my mind last week when I was watching the episode, and the answer is I don't think we've seen anything really. Have you picked up on anything, Ryan?
Someone either texted me. I don't know if it was, you, me, and your brother, if it was one of my other friends. Someone texted me and they were like, do you think there's been any foreshadowing? Because they were someone, I don't know if it was Drew. There was someone that was mentioned in the same breath as fire. And they were like, here, 1 second. Give me 30 seconds. Someone I know texted me about this and they were like, this person was mentioned with fire. Do you think this is like foreshadowing? Because they mentioned how like last season Carson, like the whole fire in his glasses symbolized that he was going to go out in fire, which was a stretch, but it actually panned out like that. I mean, someone was saying like that last episode, Jake was making something with Jake. Jake was making fire, or there's something with Jake in the fire. So maybe he gets the final 4 fire making and he either wins or he loses. I don't know. Given Jake's arc, that doesn't surprise me. But let me ask you a question, Dylan. Do you feel like, okay, actually, here's a good question. Because if Jake gets to final 4 fire, do you think Jake is going to make fire, or do you feel like Jake is like the person you bring with you? Like, who's the person that gets brought this season? Is it Jake? Is it Katura? Like, who gets brought if they make it to final 4?
I feel like Jake would get brought, right?
Right, but I think so. Yeah.
Unless he wins the immunity at the final 4, and then
gives it up,
and then literally has the Owen path, literally has the exact Owen path. Maybe it could be, but yeah, I think last season was pretty obvious. With Carson, like everyone thought he was going to fire, and he ended up going to fire. This season, I don't get that vibe from anybody.
Well, now let me ask you one more hypothetical question, though. So Heidi gave up her necklace to take out Carson because she's like, if Carson gets here, he's going to win. And she thought she could do a better job of beating him than Carolyn or Jam Jam would. Is there a Carson? Do you feel like if D makes it to Final 4, do you have to do the same thing to take D out? Or do you feel like it's not that serious with that?
If who's in it, you said?
If the audience, but also if the players are being like, oh, D is the clear front runner, do you feel like you want to ensure that D goes out, or do you feel like it's not as serious as like Carson or Jesse or whatever? Like, do you really feel like Yeah.
It's tough. It's tough. I think it's going to depend on how the rest of the game plays out. I think D, if she gets there, would be a massive threat to win. So I think it's possible.
You think more than Austin?
More than not necessarily more than Austin, but I think if both D and if two of D and Austin are potentially sitting at the end, then good luck to whoever's sitting next to them. That is what I will say. All right, actually, we got one last question here from Solomon. He wants to know, if you were Austin, would you vote out Julie with your idol or just ask for it back? That's I don't know. That's something I haven't considered. I don't think that this will be a issue per se. I don't see Julie getting voted out with Austin's idol, but I guess it is something to consider. Obviously, you don't want to make it obvious that you're voting out Julie if he does want to target Julie and turn on her. But I don't know. It's something that I never really thought of. What do you think, Ryan?
I mean, look, there's no harm in asking for it back. Now, if she says no to you, then you can decide, all right, you can hold on to it and I'll vote you out with it or something like that. Or maybe I'll make you flush it. But no, there's no harm in asking for it back. I think the answer to Solomon's question is going to be what happens next week, because if Julie's the vote, yeah, Austin could ask for it back, but that might kind of tip Julie off and she may say, you know what, you gave it to me, I'm going to kind of hold on to it. Or like I said earlier, is it going to be Julie taking a swing at D and then maybe D's going to go after Drew? It's going to really depend on who Reba goes after next week if they go for their own. But like I said, I can easily see a scenario where they're like, you know what, we'll stick it out till 6, then we'll cut Jake at 7. But we don't know.
Yeah. All righty. So that'll do it for the Soul Survivor podcast, episode 10 recap of Survivor season 45. Excited for this week's episode, and we will be back next Sunday to recap episode 11 and preview episode 12. So excited for this week.
I'm looking forward to it. Can't believe we're almost done.
Yep. Always goes by so fast.
It does, yeah. Grab your torches and head back to camp.
Good night.